The silver dollar spun in the air, catching the Arizona Territory's sunlight as Catherine Porter watched it fall back into the stagecoach driver's weathered palm. She had gambled her last coin on a simple bet heads. They'd wait for the next stage when this one broke an axle 10 miles back. Tails, she'd accept his offer to drop her at a nearby ranch to seek help. The coin had sealed her fate, and now, as she stood alone in the swirling dust watching the stagecoach disappear over the horizon, she wondered if trusting her future to chance had been wise. "Rocking R Ranch," the driver had mumbled, pointing vaguely eastward. "'Bout 2 miles that way." "Richardson'll help ya. Good man." Catherine adjusted her grip on her 2 heavy valises and began trudging in the direction indicated, the late afternoon sun of 1885 beating down on her bonnet. Her fashionable traveling dress from Philadelphia was wholly unsuited to the harsh Arizona landscape, and sweat trickled uncomfortably down her back as she walked. She'd left everything behind her position as a schoolteacher, the unwanted advances of the married school board president, the whispers that followed her after she'd rebuffed him publicly. The advertisement for a governess position at the Circle P Ranch had seemed providential, a chance to start anew in the expanding Western Territories. Now, as she picked her way across the rugged terrain, she prayed the Pattersons would send someone to collect her once she reached this rocking R. After what felt like hours, Catherine spotted the ranch in the distance. It was larger than she'd imagined, with a sprawling main house, several outbuildings, and corrals filled with horses. As she approached, a tall man emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. He paused when he spotted her, then strode purposefully in her direction. "Madam," he called, his voice carrying across the distance. Catherine set down her bags gratefully. "Good afternoon," she managed, her throat dry from the journey. "I'm looking for the Rocking R Ranch." "I was told Mr. Richardson might help me." A puzzled expression crossed his face. "This is the Broken M. I'm Blake Miller." He swept off his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair and eyes the color of burnished copper. "Richardson's place is another 15 miles east." Catherine's heart sank. "Oh," she swallowed hard against the disappointment and exhaustion. "The stagecoach driver, he must have been mistaken." Blake Miller's gaze traveled over her wilting appearance, the expensive but dusty traveling dress, and the 2 heavy bags at her feet. "Where were you headed, miss?" "Porter, Catherine Porter. I was traveling to the Circle P Ranch. I've been engaged as a governess for the Patterson children." His expression changed subtly. "Circle P is on the other side of the territory, nearly 100 miles west." The world seemed to tilt beneath Catherine's feet. That's not possible. The stage was heading east from Tucson. "East would take you to New Mexico territory, madam. Circle P is west, near the California border." Catherine felt the blood drain from her face as the full impact of the situation hit her. She had traveled in entirely the wrong direction, with barely a dollar to her name, and now stood at the wrong ranch with no means to reach her intended destination. Blake watched the realization dawn on her face. He glanced at the sky, noting the sun's position. Night's coming soon. "You can't head back out today." "I don't suppose there's another stage coming through soon?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Not for 3 days," he replied. "And even then, it'd cost you at least $20 to get all the way to Circle P." Catherine bit her lip to keep it from trembling. Her pride wouldn't allow her to break down in front of this stranger, but the dire nature of her situation was overwhelming. Blake Miller studied her for a long moment before coming to a decision. "Right or wrong, you're welcome here, Miss Porter," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "We can figure out your next move tomorrow, but for now, let's get you inside." "I couldn't possibly impose," she began. "It's no imposition," he cut in. "My sister Martha helps run the place. She'll be glad for female company." He reached for her bags. "Unless you'd prefer to sleep in the barn." Despite herself, Catherine smiled. "That won't be necessary, Mr. Miller. Thank you for your kindness." "Blake," he corrected, effortlessly lifting both her heavy valises. "We don't stand on ceremony much out here." Catherine followed him toward the main house, her mind racing. One night, she told herself, she would accept one night's hospitality and then find a way to continue her journey. The Pattersons would surely understand once she explained the situation. The house was surprisingly spacious inside, with simple but sturdy furniture. A savory smell wafted from the kitchen, making Catherine's stomach growl embarrassingly. "Martha," Blake called, "we have a visitor." A woman appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She was younger than Blake, perhaps in her early 20s, with the same copper-colored eyes but darker hair. "Well, this is unexpected," she said, her gaze curious but not unwelcoming. Blake quickly explained Catherine's situation while the exhausted traveler stood awkwardly in the entryway. "The wrong ranch. Heavens, those stage drivers get worse every year," Martha said, shaking her head. "You poor thing, you must be exhausted. Come in, I'm just finishing supper." "I don't wish to be a burden," Catherine said. Martha waved away her concern. "Nonsense. We've plenty to go around. Blake, take Miss Porter's bags to the guest room, would you, and show her where she can freshen up." Before Catherine could protest further, she was whisked upstairs to a small but clean bedroom and shown to a washroom where she gratefully removed the dust of travel from her face and hands. When she descended again, feeling somewhat restored, she found Blake and Martha seated at a large oak table with places set for 3. "Perfect timing," Martha said brightly. "I hope you like beef stew." "It smells wonderful," Catherine replied truthfully, taking the indicated seat across from Blake. As they ate, Catherine found herself telling them about Philadelphia, her teaching position, and the circumstances that had led her to seek employment in the West. She carefully omitted any mention of the school board president, offering instead a sanitized version about seeking adventure. "And the Pattersons?" Blake asked. "You've met them?" "No," Catherine admitted. "We've corresponded by letter. Mr. Patterson arranged for my passage and said someone would meet the stage in Old Tucson to bring me to the ranch." Blake and Martha exchanged a glance that Catherine couldn't interpret. "What is it?" she asked. Martha hesitated before answering. "It's just—" "The Pattersons have a certain reputation." "What kind of reputation?" Blake set down his fork. "William Patterson is known to be a hard man, some would say cruel. His wife died 3 years ago, leaving him with 4 young children. He's gone through 3 governesses in the past year alone." Catherine's stomach tightened. "The advertisement didn't mention that." "I imagine it wouldn't," Blake said dryly. "What happened to the other governesses?" Martha looked uncomfortable. "One left after Patterson supposedly took a horsewhip to her when she allowed his youngest to wander off. Another claimed he expected more than teaching services." Catherine paled. "And the third just disappeared one night," Blake said grimly. "Patterson claimed she stole from him and ran off, but nobody ever saw her again." A heavy silence fell over the table. Catherine's appetite had vanished. "Perhaps it was fortunate you ended up here instead," Martha said softly. "I've signed a contract," Catherine said, though her voice lacked conviction. "And I have nowhere else to go. I spent nearly everything I had on the journey." Blake studied her thoughtfully. "We could use help around here," he said. "Martha does too much as it is, managing the house and the books, and I've been thinking of starting a small school for the ranch hands' children and some from the neighboring properties." "Blake," Martha exclaimed, clearly surprised by this suggestion. "Just a thought," he said, shrugging. "You mentioned you were a teacher, Miss Porter." "I was," Catherine confirmed, "for 5 years." "Well," Blake said, rising from the table, "no need to make any decisions tonight. You're welcome to stay while you figure things out." After supper, Martha showed Catherine to her room, providing a nightgown and some basic toiletries. "My brother doesn't often take to strangers," she commented as she turned down the bed. "He must see something in you." Catherine wasn't sure how to respond to that, so she simply thanked Martha for her hospitality. Left alone, she sat on the edge of the bed, considering her options. The Pattersons were expecting her, but the story of the vanished governess sent a chill through her. Could she truly be safer here among strangers? Blake Miller seemed honorable enough, but she'd learned the hard way that appearances could be deceiving. Yet as she drifted off to sleep, it was Blake's words that echoed in her mind. "Right or wrong, you're welcome here." Morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the simple curtains. For a moment, Catherine was disoriented, the unfamiliar room confusing her sleep-addled mind. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back, and she sat up, running a hand through her tousled chestnut hair. After dressing in her second-best traveling outfit, she made her way downstairs to find the house quiet. A note on the kitchen table informed her that Martha had gone to town for supplies, and Blake was checking on the herd in the north pasture. Coffee simmered on the stove, and a plate covered with a cloth revealed freshly baked biscuits. Catherine helped herself then, feeling restless, decided to explore the property. Outside, the ranch bustled with activity. Cowboys moved between corrals, a blacksmith hammered at his forge, and somewhere a rooster crowed belatedly. She walked toward a large corral where several horses trotted around the perimeter. Leaning against the fence, she watched their graceful movements, enjoying the simple beauty of the animals. "You ride, Miss Porter." She turned to find Blake approaching, his hat pulled low against the morning sun. He looked different in the daylight, younger perhaps, though still weathered by years under the harsh western sky. "Not since I was a girl," she admitted. "My father kept a small stable before he lost everything in '73. Blake nodded, coming to stand beside her at the fence. "The panic hit a lot of folks hard. It's what took him in the end," she said quietly. "His heart gave out when the bank foreclosed." Blake's gaze was sympathetic but not pitying. "I lost my parents around the same time, cholera." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the shared understanding of loss creating an unexpected connection between them. "I've been thinking about your situation," Blake said eventually. "The stage won't be through until Saturday, but even then, I'm not sure heading to the Pattersons is your best option," Catherine sighed. "I don't have many options, Mr. Miller." "Blake," he reminded her, "and I meant what I said last night. We could use a teacher here. There are 15 children within riding distance who get little to no schooling." She turned to face him fully. "You're serious about starting a school?" "I've had the idea for a while," he admitted. "Just never found the right teacher. The building's already their old bunkhouse we don't use anymore. Would need some fixing up, but it could work. And where would I live? Here with us. Martha would welcome the company and we have the room." Catherine's mind raced. The offer was tempting far more so than continuing to a ranch where governesses disappeared under mysterious circumstances. "What would you expect in return?" she asked carefully. Blake's eyebrows rose slightly at her tone. "Teaching, Miss Porter, nothing more." "You'd have room, board, and a fair salary. We're not the Pattersons," she flushed, embarrassed by the implication of her question. "I apologize, it's just, I've learned to be cautious." His expression softened. "No apology needed, caution keeps people alive out here." He gestured toward the horses. "Would you like to see the rest of the ranch? Might help you decide if it's somewhere you'd want to stay." Catherine hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that very much." Blake saddled 2 horses, a gentle mare for Catherine and a spirited stallion for himself. After helping her mount and providing a brief refresher on handling the reins, they set off at a leisurely pace. The Broken M was larger than Catherine had initially realized, encompassing thousands of acres of grazing land bordered by mountains to the north and a river to the east. Blake pointed out various landmarks, explaining the operation of the cattle ranch with obvious pride. "Your family built all this?" she asked as they paused atop a ridge overlooking a verdant valley where hundreds of cattle grazed. "My father started with 50 acres and 10 head of cattle," Blake replied. "Martha and I have expanded it since taking over. We run about 2,000 head now." "It's impressive," Catherine said sincerely. "You've accomplished a great deal." Blake shrugged, though she could tell her words pleased him. "Still plenty to do, that's why having a proper school matters. Can't build something lasting if the next generation doesn't have the knowledge to carry it forward." They rode for another hour, eventually stopping beside a small creek where wildflowers grew in unexpected profusion. Blake produced a simple lunch from his saddlebags: bread, cheese, and apples which they shared in the dappled shade of a cottonwood tree. "Can I ask you something, Miss Porter?" Blake said as they finished eating. "Catherine," she corrected with a small smile, "if I'm to call you Blake." He nodded, acknowledging the concession. "Catherine, then, what really brought you west? There must be plenty of teaching positions back east." She considered deflecting the question but found herself wanting to tell him the truth. "The school board president developed an interest in me." When I refused his advances, he began spreading rumors that I had been the one pursuing him. His wife believed him, of course. Soon, parents were requesting their children be moved to different classes. The board suggested I resign to avoid a scandal. Blake's expression darkened. So you were punished for his behavior. That's often how these things go, she said with a resignation born of experience. Men like Harlan Peterson exist everywhere, I suppose. I just needed to get far enough away to start fresh. Men like that exist everywhere, Blake agreed, but they're not all men. Some of us believe women deserve respect, not just pretty words hiding ugly intentions. Something in his tone made Catherine look at him more closely. There was a sincerity in his eyes that she found herself wanting to trust, despite her better judgment. Well, she said, gathering the remains of their lunch, I appreciate your candor and your offer. I'd like to see this bunkhouse you mentioned, the potential school. Blake's face brightened. We can ride there now if you're not too tired. The old bunkhouse sat about half a mile from the main house, a solid structure built of timber and stone. Inside, it was dusty and filled with discarded furniture, but Catherine could immediately see the potential. Large windows let in ample light, and the open space could easily accommodate desks and a teaching area. What do you think? Blake asked, watching her reaction. Catherine walked slowly around the room, mentally arranging furniture, envisioning children seated for lessons. It would need a good cleaning, proper desks, books, slates. All manageable, Blake said confidently. She turned to him, a slow smile spreading across her face. Yes, I believe it is. By the time they returned to the main house, Catherine had made her decision. The prospect of creating a school from nothing was both daunting and exhilarating, far more appealing than becoming another vanished governess at the Circle P Ranch. Martha was delighted when Catherine announced she would stay, immediately launching into plans for converting the bunkhouse and sending word to neighboring ranches about the new school. We should let the Pattersons know you won't be coming, Blake reminded Catherine that evening. I can send a telegram from town tomorrow. Catherine nodded, relief washing over her at having made the decision. Thank you for everything. Blake held her gaze a moment longer than necessary. We're the ones who should be thanking you. This place has needed someone like you for a long time. The following weeks passed in a blur of activity. The bunkhouse transformation proceeded rapidly, with ranch hands pitching in during their free time to install desks crafted by the broken Mtikes carpenter. Blake ordered books, slates, and other supplies from a catalog, paying for them without hesitation despite Catherine's protests about the expense. Consider it an investment, he told her when a crate of readers and arithmetic texts arrived. Education always pays dividends. Word spread quickly about the new school, and soon Catherine found herself meeting prospective students and their parents. Some were ranch hands' children, others from neighboring properties. A few were the offspring of settlers trying to farm the challenging Arizona soil. All shared a hunger for learning that Catherine found deeply moving. The school officially opened in early October, with 15 students ranging in age from 6 to 16. Catherine quickly established a routine, dividing the children into groups based on their abilities rather than strict age divisions. The older students helped the younger ones, creating a collaborative atmosphere that Catherine encouraged. Blake often found reasons to visit during the school day, sometimes bringing a ranch hand to fix something, other times just stopping by to observe. Catherine pretended not to notice how his visits grew more frequent as the weeks passed, or how Martha's knowing smiles when they spoke of her brother made her cheeks warm. One evening in late October, Catherine sat on the front porch after supper, enjoying the cooler air that autumn had brought to the desert. The door opened behind her, and Blake emerged with 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might like some company, he said, offering her a cup. Thank you. She accepted gratefully, moving over on the bench to make room for him. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. The children are doing well, Blake said eventually. Everyone in the county's talking about your school, Catherine smiled. They're bright children, eager to learn. It's more than that, Blake insisted. It's the teacher. You have a gift, Catherine. She ducked her head at the compliment, unused to such direct praise. It helps to have support. You've given me everything I need to succeed." "Not everything," Blake said quietly. Catherine looked up, startled by his tone. In the dim light spilling from the house windows, his expression was unreadable. "What do you mean?" Blake set his coffee cup aside and turned toward her. "I find myself thinking about you when you're teaching. When you're at the dinner table, when you're reading by the fire in the evenings." He paused. "I know you came here by accident, a twist of fate, and a confused stage driver, but I've come to believe there was purpose in it." Catherine's heart began to race. "Blake, let me finish," he said gently. "I'm not a man who trusts easily. After my parents died, I focused on building this ranch, on providing for Martha. I never thought I needed anything else. Then you arrived, and suddenly I'm finding reasons to visit the schoolhouse, hoping to catch a glimpse of you with the children, or hear your laugh when one of them says something clever." He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. Just wanted you to know that my welcome has grown into something more, something I hope you might consider." Catherine stared at their joined hands, emotions warring within her. Fear of being hurt again battled with the undeniable attraction she felt toward this honest, hardworking man. "I came west to escape a man who only saw me as something to possess," she said carefully. "I never expected to find someone who might see me as a partner." Blake's thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. "Is that what you want? A partner?" She met his gaze. "I think it might be, but I'm still learning who I am out here, who I can be when I'm not defined by others' expectations." Blake nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Then we'll take it slowly. No pressure, just two people getting to know each other better." He released her hand and picked up his coffee cup again. "Though I hope you'll allow me to call on you properly, maybe take you to the harvest dance in town next month." Catherine smiled, a weight lifting from her shoulders at his understanding. "I'd like that very much." As autumn deepened toward winter, Catherine and Blake's courtship progressed with the same steady, unhurried pace that characterized life on the Broken M. Blake escorted her to the harvest dance as promised, where his evident pride in introducing her to friends and neighbors made Catherine feel valued in a way she'd never experienced before. The school thrived, growing to 20 students by December when a heavy snow forced them to close for a week. The unexpected break gave Catherine time to help Martha prepare for Christmas, baking cookies and making simple decorations for the house. "My brother's changed since you came," Martha remarked one afternoon as they rolled out dough for gingerbread. "He smiles more. Makes plans beyond the next cattle drive or breeding season." Catherine felt a flush creep up her neck. "He's been very kind to me," Martha laughed. "Kind isn't the word I'd use. Smitten, perhaps, head over heels." "Martha," Catherine protested, though she couldn't suppress her smile. "Don't tell me you haven't noticed," Martha teased. "The man practically trips over his own boots when you walk into a room." Catherine concentrated on cutting star shapes from the dough. "I've noticed," she admitted. "I'm just cautious. My experience with men hasn't always been positive." Martha's expression softened. "Blake told me a little about what happened in Philadelphia, enough that I understand your hesitation." She placed a flour-dusted hand over Catherine's. "But my brother is the best man I know, stubborn as a mule sometimes, but honest to his core." "I believe that," Catherine said. "It's myself I'm unsure of. I've been independent for so long. I'm not certain I remember how to be part of a pair." "From what I've seen," Martha said, returning to her baking, "the best pairs are made of two strong individuals who choose to walk together, not one person losing themselves in another." Catherine pondered Martha's words as Christmas approached. The holiday itself was a joyous affair, with ranch hands and their families joining them for a feast in the main house. Blake presented Catherine with a beautifully bound collection of Shakespeare's works, while she gave him a hand-knitted scarf she'd worked on secretly during evenings. The winter months passed in a rhythm of teaching, shared meals, and increasingly frequent moments alone with Blake. They rode together on weekends, explored the snowy landscape, and spent evenings by the fire discussing books, the ranch, and their hopes for the future. With each conversation, each shared laugh, each quiet moment of understanding, Catherine felt the barriers around her heart weakening. By spring, the school had become a fixture in the community, with plans underway to build a proper schoolhouse closer to town for the following year. Blake supported Catherine's vision wholeheartedly, offering land from the broken MTKS holdings for the building site. "This is becoming more than just a ranch school," he told her one evening as they walked along the creek where wildflowers were beginning to bloom again. "You're building something that will last generations." "We're building it," she corrected him. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." Blake stopped walking and turned to face her. The setting sun gilded his features, highlighting the warmth in his copper eyes. "Catherine, there's something I've been wanting to ask you," her breath caught as he took both her hands in his. "Yes, these past months have been the happiest of my life. Having you here, watching you with the children, seeing how you've brought life and learning to this corner of the territory." He paused, visibly gathering his courage. "I know it hasn't been a year yet since that stage driver dropped you at the wrong ranch, but I can't imagine my life without you now." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet pouch. "This was my mother's," he said, tipping a delicate gold ring with a single pearl into his palm. "I'd be honored if you'd wear it as my wife." Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes. Blake. Concern crossed his face at her hesitation. "If it's too soon, no," she interrupted, squeezing his hand. "It's not that. I just never imagined finding someone like you, someone who supports my dreams instead of asking me to set them aside, someone who sees me as an equal." "Is that a yes?" he asked, hope brightening his features. Catherine laughed through her tears. "Yes, yes, I will marry you, Blake Miller." His answering smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into his arms for their first real kiss. It was gentle at first, almost hesitant, but deepened as Catherine responded, her arms winding around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Blake rested his forehead against hers. "Right or wrong, coming here was the best mistake you ever made," he murmured. Catherine smiled, her heart full. The only mistake would have been leaving. They married in May, with the entire community gathering to celebrate. The ceremony took place beneath the cottonwood tree by the creek, with Martha serving as Catherine's attendant and the ranch foreman standing up for Blake. Students from the school sang hymns, and the local judge performed the ceremony with dignity and humor. "I never saw two people more meant for each other," he declared as he pronounced them husband and wife. "What chance brought together, love has sealed for a lifetime." The celebration continued well into the evening, with dancing, feasting, and toasts to the couple's happiness. As the stars appeared overhead, Blake led Catherine away from the festivities toward a small cottage that had been secretly prepared for them at the edge of the property. "Your wedding gift," he explained as he carried her across the threshold. "A place of our own, though still close enough to the main house for convenience." Catherine was touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift, recognizing his understanding that she'd value having a space that was truly theirs rather than continuing to live with Martha. "It's perfect," she whispered, drawing him down for a kiss that expressed all the love and gratitude she felt. That night, as they discovered each other as husband and wife, Catherine marveled at how completely her life had transformed in less than a year. From a desperate flight from scandal, to finding true partnership with a man who respected her mind as much as he desired her body, it was more than she had ever dared hope for. The following months brought adjustments as they settled into married life. Blake's work on the ranch kept him busy from dawn till dusk most days, while Catherine divided her time between teaching and learning the intricacies of helping run a large cattle operation. They made time for each other in the evenings, often sitting on the porch of their cottage, discussing the day's events or simply enjoying the peaceful desert nights together. In July, the town council approved funds for the new schoolhouse, with construction set to begin in August. Catherine threw herself into planning the expanded curriculum, ordering additional books and supplies, and recruiting a second teacher to help with the growing number of students. "You're building a legacy," Blake told her proudly as they reviewed the architectural drawings for the school building. "Our children will attend this school someday." Catherine looked up sharply at his words. They hadn't discussed children specifically, though both had assumed they would have a family eventually. "Our children," she repeated softly, a smile spreading across her face. I like the sound of that. Blake's eyes darkened with emotion as he pulled her into his arms. So do I. By autumn, Catherine had news to share. As they sat before the fire one evening in early October, almost exactly a year after the school had first opened, she took Blake's hand and placed it gently on her still flat stomach. Our first student won't be attending the new school for a few years yet, she said, watching his face as understanding dawned. A baby, he whispered, awe transforming his features. You're certain? Catherine nodded, her own eyes filling with happy tears. Dr. Reynolds confirmed it yesterday. We're expecting a child in late spring. Blake gathered her into a fierce, gentle embrace, his voice thick with emotion. I never knew it was possible to be this happy. Martha was equally delighted by the news, immediately beginning to knit tiny garments and plan changes to accommodate a nursery in the cottage. The entire ranch seemed to share in their joy, with hands offering congratulations and women from neighboring properties bringing traditional gifts for the expectant mother. The winter passed peacefully, with Catherine continuing to teach until February, when the journey between the ranch and school became too difficult in her condition. Blake grew increasingly protective, insisting on accompanying her everywhere and fretting over her smallest discomfort, much to Catherine's amused exasperation. I'm with child, not made of glass, she reminded him one evening as he fussed over her seating arrangement at dinner. Humor me, he replied, kissing her temple. It's my first time at this. Mine too, she pointed out dryly. Martha laughed. Lord help us all when the baby actually arrives. He'll have the poor thing wrapped in cotton wool and never let it touch the ground. Blake looked affronted. I'll have you know I plan to teach my son or daughter to ride as soon as they can sit up straight. Over my dead body, Catherine retorted, though the image of Blake carefully leading a small child on a gentle pony made her heart swell with tenderness. Spring brought new life to the ranch in more ways than one. The cattle drive departed in early April with Blake reluctantly leaving Catherine in Martha's capable hands, extracting a promise to send word immediately when her time came. Catherine assured him that first babies rarely arrived early, and he had plenty of time to complete the drive to the railhead and return. Nature, however, had other plans. 2 weeks before her expected time, Catherine awoke in the night to the unmistakable sensation of her waters breaking. Martha sent a ranch hand galloping toward the cattle drive's route with the news while helping Catherine prepare for the birth. The labor was long and difficult. By midday, Catherine's strength was flagging, and the local midwife looked increasingly concerned as she examined her patient. The baby's turned wrong, she murmured to Martha. We may need the doctor. Another rider was dispatched to town, but Dr. Reynolds was attending a birth on a distant farm. Hours passed with Catherine growing weaker, her pains intensifying without progress. Blake, she whispered during a moment of clarity between contractions. I need Blake. Martha held her hand tightly. He's coming, Catherine. He'll be here. As evening approached, the sound of galloping hooves penetrated Catherine's pain, fogged consciousness. Moments later, the door burst open and Blake rushed in, his clothes dusty from hard riding, his face haggard with worry. Catherine, he was at her side instantly, taking her hand. I'm here, darling, I'm here. His presence seemed to give her renewed strength. With his support, Catherine redoubled her efforts, and just after midnight, their son entered the world with a lusty cry that filled the cottage. A boy, the midwife announced, placing the swaddled infant in Catherine's exhausted arms. A fine, strong boy. Blake stared at the tiny face in wonder, one finger gently touching the downy head. He's perfect, he whispered. You're both perfect. They named him Benjamin Thomas Miller, honoring both Blake's father and Catherine's. The first few weeks were a blur of exhaustion and joy as they adjusted to parenthood. Blake proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with the fussy infant to allow Catherine much-needed rest, changing linens without complaint, and proudly showing off his son to everyone who visited. By summer, Catherine had recovered her strength and found a new balance in her life. She returned to the school part-time, bringing Benjamin with her, much to the delight of her students who took turns holding and entertaining the baby while she taught. The new schoolhouse was completed in August, a handsome structure with 2 classrooms, a small library, and living quarters for the second teacher who had arrived from Denver. Catherine took immense satisfaction in seeing her vision realized, knowing that children for generations would benefit from the foundation she had helped establish. As Benjamin's first birthday approached, Blake surprised Catherine with news of his own. "I've purchased the Richardson property," he told her one evening after Benjamin was asleep. "The rocking R," Catherine's eyes widened. "The ranch where I was supposed to go that first day," Blake nodded. "Old Richardson's moving to California to live with his daughter. The place has good water rights and adjoins our eastern boundary. It'll nearly double our holdings." "That's wonderful news," Catherine said, genuinely pleased. The Broken M had prospered under Blake's management, and the expansion made good business sense. "There's more," Blake continued, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "I've been corresponding with some agricultural experts back east. They've developed new irrigation techniques that might allow us to grow crops on some of the land wheat, maybe even fruit trees in the protected valleys." Catherine studied his face, recognizing how important this was to him. "You want to diversify beyond cattle?" "Yes. It's riskier in the short term, but more stable in the long run. If we can make it work, the Broken M won't be vulnerable to a single bad market or a harsh winter." "You're building something that will last generations," Catherine said softly, echoing his words from a year before. Blake smiled, taking her hands in his. "For Benjamin, and any brothers or sisters who might come along." Catherine's heart skipped a beat. "Funny you should mention that." Blake's eyes widened. "Are you?" She nodded, laughing as he swept her into his arms, spinning her around the small parlor. "When?" he asked, setting her down gently. "Early spring. April, Dr. Reynolds thinks." Blake placed a gentle hand on her stomach, his expression reverent. "I can hardly believe it. Another miracle." As Benjamin's birthday celebration approached, Blake had one more surprise planned. On the eve of the anniversary of their son's birth, he led Catherine to their special spot by the creek where he had proposed 2 years earlier. "What are we doing out here?" she asked as he spread a blanket beneath the cottonwood tree, now in full leaf. "Celebrating," he said, producing a small picnic and a bottle of wine from a basket. 2 years since you mistakenly arrived at my ranch, 2 years that have changed everything." Catherine smiled, accepting the glass he offered. "Best wrong turn I ever took." They sat side by side as the sun set, reminiscing about their first meeting, the early days of the school, their courtship and wedding, Benjamin's birth, and all the small moments that had knit their lives so tightly together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd reached the Circle P that day?" Blake asked, his arm around her shoulders. Catherine shuddered. "I try not to. The last governess was never found, you know. Mr. Patterson remarried last year, I heard. His new wife is barely 20 and already expecting their first child." Blake pulled her closer. "Then I'm even more grateful for that confused stage driver. He might have saved your life." "He certainly gave me a new one," Catherine agreed. "A better one than I ever imagined possible." As darkness fell, they gathered their things and walked hand in hand back toward their cottage where Martha waited with Benjamin. The lights of the Broken M ranch house glowed in the distance, a beacon of home and belonging. "I have something for you," Blake said, reaching into his pocket as they paused on the porch. He withdrew a small velvet box and placed it in her hand. An anniversary gift of sorts. Catherine opened it to find a gold locket on a delicate chain. Inside were tiny portraits, Blake on one side, Benjamin on the other. "It's beautiful," she whispered as he fastened it around her neck. "Room for more on the other side," he said, his hand brushing against her still flat stomach. "As our family grows." Catherine leaned into his embrace, overwhelmed with gratitude for the life they had built together. "I love you, Blake Miller, more than I ever thought possible." "And I love you, Catherine Miller," he replied, kissing her tenderly. "Right or wrong, you found your way home that day. And I intend to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." Inside, Benjamin began to cry, his timing impeccable as always. They exchanged a smile of shared understanding before heading inside to tend to their son. their steps perfectly in sync, two individuals walking together by choice, building a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. The years that followed brought both joys and challenges to the Miller family. Their daughter, Elizabeth Martha, arrived as predicted in April, a beautiful child with her father's copper eyes and her mother's determined spirit. Benjamin took to his role as big brother with enthusiasm, if not always perfect gentleness, prompting many gentle corrections from his parents. The expanded Broken M flourished under Blake and Catherine's joint stewardship. The experimental crops proved successful beyond expectations, with apple orchards eventually becoming a signature product of the ranch. Catherine continued to divide her time between family and the school, eventually taking on an administrative role as the institution grew to serve children from throughout the county. By 1895, 10 years after Catherine's fortuitous arrival at the wrong ranch, the Broken M had become one of the most prosperous properties in the Arizona Territory. Their family had grown to include a third child, James, born 2 years after Elizabeth. The original cottage had been expanded to accommodate their growing family, though they retained the original rooms as a reminder of where their life together had begun. On the 10th anniversary of Catherine's arrival, Blake organized a celebration that brought together the entire community, ranch hands and their families, teachers and students, neighbors and friends from town. Under the spreading branches of the cottonwood tree where they had married, Blake raised a toast to the woman who had transformed his life. "To Catherine," he said, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd, "who came to the wrong ranch and found the right life. Who built a school where there was none, created a family where there was solitude, and brought love where there was mere existence. I thank God every day for confused stage drivers and stubborn, beautiful school teachers." Laughter and applause greeted his words. Catherine, standing beside him with happy tears in her eyes, marveled at how completely her life had changed from the desperate young woman who had arrived with nothing but 2 heavy valises and dwindling hope. "And to Blake," she added, raising her own glass, "who said right or wrong, 'You're welcome here' to a stranger, and kept that promise in ways neither of us could have imagined. Thank you for making room in your life, your home, and your heart." As the celebration continued around them, Blake drew Catherine away for a moment of privacy. "Happy?" he asked, tucking a strand of hair now with threads of silver among the chestnut behind her ear. Catherine smiled up at him, her heart as full as it had been on their wedding day. "More than happy, content, complete." Blake's eyes, still as warm and honest as the day they'd met, held hers. "Me too. Though I still think that stage driver deserves a bonus." Catherine laughed, resting her head against his shoulder as they watched their children playing with the other youngsters near the creek. "I've often wondered about him. Whether he knew what he was doing, sending me here instead of to the Circle P. Maybe fate just needed a helping hand," Blake suggested. "Either way, I'm grateful." From across the gathering, Benjamin waved to them, his 7-year-old face alight with excitement as he showed off a frog he'd caught to his younger siblings. "We should get back," Catherine said, though she made no move to leave Blake's embrace. "In a minute," Blake replied, tightening his arms around her. "Just want to hold my wife a moment longer. It's not every day we celebrate the best wrong turn in history." As they rejoined the celebration, Catherine reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a scandalized schoolteacher fleeing unwanted advances to the respected co-founder of both a school and a thriving ranch enterprise. From a woman alone to the heart of a loving family. From lost to found. The silver dollar that had sealed her fate, that day heads or tails, wait or seek help, was now framed in Blake's study. A constant reminder that sometimes the most significant moments in life hinge on the smallest decisions. In the years that followed, the Millers watched their children grow, their ranch prosper, and their community flourish around the foundations they had helped establish. Benjamin eventually took over management of the ranch operations. Elizabeth became a teacher in the school her mother had founded, and James studied law before returning to help navigate the increasingly complex legal landscape as Arizona moved toward statehood. Through it all, Blake and Catherine remained partners in every sense, their bond deepening with shared experiences, challenges overcome together, and the quiet moments that formed the true fabric of their marriage. And on quiet evenings, they still sometimes walked to the creek where wildflowers grew, sat beneath the cottonwood tree, and marveled at how one confused stage driver and a misplaced silver dollar had changed the course of both their lives, forever a wrong turn that had led them exactly where they were meant to be.